By the authority vested in me, I hereby declare this meeting of the Conshohocken Borough Council duly open and ready to conduct any business that may come before it.
Thank you.
Prayer for council.
Please stand. O divine Master, in deep humility, we place ourselves, our thoughts, and our plans in thy hands. We beg thee to fill our minds and our wills with the gifts of wisdom, understanding, counsel, fortitude, knowledge, and piety. Help us not think of self or personal desires, but rather consider the responsibilities laid upon us. Help us to promote as far as possible the welfare of our people and to treat them with impartiality and justice. Grant us the power to set a good example in thought, word, and deed, so that thy blessings will be showered upon us and the power and the people we represent. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call. Councilmember Totino.
Present.
Councilmember Griffin.
I'm here.
Councilmember Sokolowski. Here. Councilmember Barton.
Here.
Note for the record that Councilman Stokely is absent. Vice President Flanagan.
Present.
President Leonard.
Here.
Mayor Aronson.
Here.
Thank you.
The first item on the agenda is to conduct interviews for special legal counsel in conjunction with the RFQ for the sewer system sale exploration. Mr. Feller from Diller Paxson.
He is outside. Brittany is getting him.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Feller.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for coming in.
Sure. I seem a little frazzled. I'm just coming from the pre-closing of the Cheltenham system sale, which we just finished up around 5 o'clock. So
Well, that actually fits into one of our first questions. Do you have experience and have served in this capacity before?
yes, thanks for asking. I started out back in the sewer field in 2012, working with the city of Allentown and PFM, in partnership with PFM, for the lease concession of their water and sewer system. They decided to go that route, but it has many similarities to a sale. And we worked on that for a couple of years. It's a very complex process. Lease concessions are more complex than sales. So that was sort of my first round of experience in Pennsylvania. And since then, we worked on Cheltenham. We've been working on Cheltenham for 3 years. And the reason it takes so long is when you have a regulated utility that is the buyer, it must get approval from the Public Utility Commission, and that can be a long process, especially if there are people who intervene and make things difficult. But it does take a long time, and in Cheltenham, there was a very, very lengthy public engagement process where they had meetings and public meetings and discussions and debates and executive sessions, and it just went on for a very long time before they decided that they were going to issue a request for bids. And so that was one of the longer ones. We also worked on Upper Merion for quite a while, and they ultimately decided not to sell. They went as far as issuing a request for bids, got the bids, and got some very substantial bids, but decided, for whatever reason, we're not entirely sure. The decisions were made not in front of us. So they decided not to go forward, and that's a perfectly legitimate outcome. I mean, we are not here to try to sell you on selling your system, convince you that this is what you have to do or it's the best decision. What we try to do is give you a summary of the pluses and minuses, the risks and rewards, and put the facts in front of you. But ultimately, it's a decision that you have to make based on your judgment, based on input from the public, based on maybe even your political persuasions and things. But it is by no means something that you definitely have to proceed through completion when you start the process. It's hard to know what to do until you get the bids.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, in Upper Merion, they went out for bids, they got the bids, they saw them, and decided not to proceed. We also, have worked on other systems, worked for a period of time on West Norriton and Plymouth. Those are not, I'm sorry, East Norriton and Plymouth, those have not gone through yet. What you will hear, and I'm going to put it right on the table, the gentleman sitting out in the lobby is a competitor of ours, but he's also a former partner of mine. And we worked on these transactions together for quite a long period of time. So you'll hear some overlap in the experience that we have. And I think very highly of him. I have nothing negative to say about him. He's a very competent lawyer, but I just wanted you to be aware of that because you may hear some duplicative transactions that we talk about. And we've also been involved in other municipal asset sales involving parking systems, which even though they're very different from sewers, a lot of the same kinds of issues are involved in terms of public process and bidding and things of that nature. We're also currently advising West Norriton, which is feeding into the Norristown system, because Norristown is planning to sell. West Norriton wanted our advice on how to deal with Norristown in connection with that transaction. So we've been doing it for a while. And
What are some of the other parties that might be intervening?
well, the two most typical parties are ratepayers, people who have the maybe time and resources to intervene, to complain about rate increases that may occur as a result of the transaction. It could be residents, some who get together and pool their assets. It could be a commercial customer that is consuming a large quantity of water and using a large amount of sewage capacity. If you have, for example, a brewery that puts a lot of waste into the system, they may not like what they're seeing in terms of the rate structure of, let's say, Aqua or American Water, so they may intervene. In the Cheltenham case, it was a little more challenging because the intervener was a real estate developer who was not happy with the township's handling of his land use and zoning, and did not, in the sale documents, we call it an asset purchase agreement, have an allocation of sewer connections, we call them EDUs, for his project. And he was very, very upset that this project was not there. And the township's position is you didn't get the proper approvals and zoning. We're not going to give you sewer connections if you didn't go through that process. Well, he didn't buy that, and he intervened, he tried to intervene. Both the administrative law judge and the full Public Utility Commission denied his intervention. And everything was looking good until he filed an appeal with the Commonwealth Court. And that's where it is now. And we had to spend the last couple of weeks, working on, so I should say workarounds, so that we could close the transaction even while his appeal was pending. So those are a couple of examples of the kinds of interveners you might see.
Thank you.
Could you please explain how you would see the relationship functioning between the borough administration and your team regarding the RFQ and the RFB process, and then how PFM plays into that?
Sure. First of all, I will have to say it's not one size fits all. What I found is that each municipality has its own personality, which is just made up of the way the business is conducted by the board, the personalities of board people, the personality of the township manager, and how the township manager interacts with the board. And we found very different dynamics between the boards, township manager, PFM, and ourselves, depending on which township we're in. In Cheltenham, for example, the Board of Commissioners play an extremely active role, almost a micromanagement type of role in every aspect of the documents of the transaction, and exert a lot of control over the township manager and limit his flexibility. In other places, one of the transactions I forgot to mention was Limerick. We worked on the Limerick sale. The manager had much more independence and discretion to make decisions, and didn't have to go running back to the board, or didn't feel he had to, every time a question came up. So the interaction, first of all, we work very closely with PFM, so we're consulting with them during one of these transactions on a regular basis because the financial issues are intertwined with the legal issues. So we're constantly coordinating about what we can do, what we can't do, what makes sense, what works under the Borough Code, for example. And then PFM, and we're dealing with Scott Shearer, he is typically the primary liaison between the governmental entity and us. I mean, not that we don't have direct communications with township manager, township solicitor, but Scott is the quarterback, and he is the one who's sort of directing the traffic and running the show, and we just work jointly with him. When we need to engage in a substantive discussion, we call a meeting or a conference call with whoever the board or of the township or borough decides are the key people in the transaction. And again, it differs from township to township. So,
Could I just ask a follow-up question to that? So you talked about Allentown and that you worked with PFM in Allentown.
yes.
And you ended up landing on a lease arrangement versus overall sale. How did that come about between the three entities involved? I'm sure that it went through the process of an evaluation. How did you land on the lease?
Well, it was interesting because, again, each place is different. So Allentown had a combined water and sewer system, and some of the water was coming from a spring that was known to have very high-quality water. And the perception, after having some public discussions that the mayor developed, was that there would be a lot of opposition to selling this valuable asset, which included a very important water supply. So there was also some concern among some members of the public that just generally, and you'll probably hear some here and elsewhere, that why are we selling a valuable municipal asset? I mean, that was a general question and concern that had been raised by some folks. And the answer was that the city just didn't have the expertise and skill and manpower, number one, but also number two, they needed to plug a huge hole in their pension plan. So the lease concession gave them sort of the best of both worlds. It provided a substantial upfront payment, and in addition to annual payments that they received, allowed the city to maintain ownership of the system, avoided any PUC regulation, even though the buyer would not have been subject to PUC regulation. Ultimately, the buyer was Lehigh County Authority, a municipal authority. So, it just seemed to make sense from taking all of those factors into account. Now, the end result is that that's in litigation. There's a dispute going on between the company, the Lehigh County Authority, and the city over representations that were made at the time of the sale, and they're not happy with the amount of revenue they're receiving, and it's been contentious. And the only other lease concession agreement that was done on water and sewer was done in Middletown Borough in Dauphin County, and we handled we didn't handle the transaction, but they brought us in after the battles started. And we represented the borough in litigation with the concession company. Unfortunately, the agreement was not drafted in a way that allowed us to be terribly successful in the litigation. So the lease concession model has some benefits, but I couldn't recommend it knowing how many issues there are that can sort of deteriorate into disputes. It's just much cleaner to sell and just get out of the business and get it out of your hands if you decide to do anything.
Do you or your firm have any personal or business issues that would prohibit or be deemed a conflict of interest with your company serving as the borough's legal counsel on this matter?
I don't think so. We worked on the sale, that was another one I forgot to mention, the West Conshohocken system to the authority here. Tom and I both worked on that transaction, so they were a direct client of ours. That transaction has been completed, so we are no longer doing work for them, so I don't see an issue there. We, like most firms, do occasional work for the water companies. So one of the lawyers in our firm handles bond issues for Aqua, Pennsylvania. So Aqua, in order to get the money to buy these systems, has to issue corporate debt. And we have an attorney who works with them to issue that debt. We have a conflict waiver from Aqua, and we, in all of our engagements, seek a waiver from the municipality. We keep as much as we can, we keep a sort of a wall between those who are working on the transaction involving a sale and those who are handling the bond work, but it really is not anything that, from my experience, has created an issue. In fact, if you were to ask the Aqua folks how things went in this Cheltenham transaction, they probably would say that we were very aggressive in some of the demands that we made of them in that transaction. American Water, we've done some work over the years for American Water. We also have a waiver from them, but we're not currently very active in doing anything for American Water at the present time, except maybe a little bit in their New Jersey subsidiary. Other than that, I really can't think of anything else that would be a conflict. And in our proposal letter, I did disclose those kinds of conflicts that can come up.
So in a multi-year approach to selling a sewer authority, what percentage of time through the various levels of your company, partners versus associates versus paralegals, what percentage of time would be a partner's amount of time during that 3-year process versus an associate or a paralegal?
I'd say the majority of the time is probably the partner, only because these are complicated transactions and you need to have people who are more experienced dealing with these issues and in many cases exercising judgment that may be based on many more years of practice. In our firm, we have I consider to be a young woman who was an associate, and she's now a partner. We recently made her a partner. Yale Law graduate. She's worked on these deals. She's worked with me on the Cheltenham deal. But even though she's a partner, her hourly rate is not that high because she's on the young end of the partner scale. And in the closing today, I had an associate, a fairly young associate helping me with the transaction. So if I had it allocated, I'd probably say maybe 60% on the partner side, and then maybe 30% on the young partner side, and 10% on the associate side.
Thank you.
Sure.
Anyone else have any questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure.
Good night.
night.
Thank you
Thanks
for
for
coming
coming.
in.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Wyatt.
Thank you for having me here tonight.
Thank you for coming.
Of course.
As a matter of introduction, could you tell us what previous experience you've had working with similar sized municipalities as Conshohocken?
Yes. And so, good evening. My name's Tom White. I'm from Obermeyer. I'm a new face to you all, but I think from a lag time perspective, Obermeyer is a very well-known commodity, I think. So I've worked on about 17 of these transactions over the last 4 years. I've worked on a couple of recent non-regulated transactions where a municipality in Bucks County sold its water assets to an authority and then sold its sewer assets to another authority. Each of those transactions was $16 million apiece. I've worked on a very large third-class city transaction in western Pennsylvania that was $158 million, and that case was sold to or those assets were sold to a regulated utility, and that sale was the first sale under the fair market value statute, under the new PUC fair market value statute, which we can get into in a moment. Most recently, this week, I've signed up a transaction in Chester County for $21 million. It's a combined water and sewer, so about $7 million for the sewer and about $13 million for the water. And then in Montgomery County last week, we signed up another transaction, sewer only, for about $13 million. And I also have some clients I work for who are authorities who are looking to grow, so I represent them in trying to absorb surrounding communities as well. So I'm working on transactions right now where there's 200 customers, and I'm working on transactions right now where there's over 10,000. So I've really seen the gamut. But what I have learned in all those transactions, that each of them is complex in their own way, but they present very similar thematic issues, which we can get into as well. Did that answer your question?
Yes. So what are some of the issues that we should be forewarned about?
Yeah, so I think you know as well as I do, or you know better than I do, about the need for open communication and transparency, and I would defer to you on that. But some of the issues that come up every time relate to rates. What's going to happen with rates? How are we going to be protected in the future with respect to the cost of service? How are we going to ensure that the purchaser has the financial and the operational wherewithal to get the job done for the community? I'm also very familiar with the DEP. Work with communities on their I'm not an engineer. I work very closely with the engineers of the municipalities on the 537 plans, making sure that communications with respect to permit transfers and with respect to the 537 plan update, which would be inevitable if we decided to go forward with a sale, are done in an appropriate fashion. And then if we end up going to the PUC, I'm very familiar with the PUC process. Right now I'm representing 4 municipalities before the PUC and have represented several others to settlement at the PUC. And that can be a world unto itself. It's a lot like litigation, but it's a very specific and unique kind of litigation.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So could you explain how you see the relationship functioning between the borough administration and your team with regards to the RFP and the RFB process, or the RFQ and the RFB process?
Yes. So as I said, I worked on a number of these deals, and the way that they are successful is as special counsel, working hand in glove as a member of the team. The administration will lead along with with the board, and so they know the assets, they know the ins and outs of the borough. So we work very closely with them and the solicitor and PFM. I've worked on many, I'm not exactly sure how many transactions with PFM, And I would work very closely and collaborate with the solicitor. They're the general counsel of the operation, and they would lead from a governance perspective and very often lead from a property perspective. And then on a day-to-day reporting, I would be the face of the transaction and would collaborate constantly with the manager. And they would help direct the due diligence process, which can be intense. And I would support the administration in making sure that the intense due diligence process is not so intense that they can't do their day job.
In the paperwork that we got about your company, you talked a little bit about sole source versus two-bid process. Can you just tell me a little bit about how that factors into discussions
It's a great
during
question.
the process?
Let me get, so we are a borough, so we could sole source to an authority. We would have to bid to a regulated utility. But let me give you an example. So there's a very large authority in Delaware County who is looking to monetize their assets. They looked around at what utilities were near them, and it turned out that a certain regulated utility was on all sides of them from a sewer perspective, and most of the water inside of their footprint was from that utility. And so for them, it was a very easy decision. Well, I don't know if it was an easy decision, but after a lot of deliberation, it was clear that they would sole source that to the operator that they knew could handle the job, and negotiations began that way. Very often, in fact, most times in the transactions I work on, they're bid. And so there'll be a portion of the program, a portion of the transaction where you put out an RFQ to ensure that you get the most qualified people. Once the individual utilities or authorities are qualified, they get involved in due diligence. That can be intense. Then there's a negotiation of an APA to make sure that we understand what the agreement's going to be before we get to a bid. And then you send out the bid document. And that can be arranged in a lot of different ways. Most often, it's the highest bidder wins. It's easier to administer, and from there you decide whether the highest bid fits the needs for the borough and award it.
Thank you.
But there's no one-size-fits-all, and I think that a full discussion around the pluses and minuses of doing a sole source versus a bid, and then how do you want to run the bid to bring the best value. And that's what we hope as Obermeyer to bring, is perspective on many, many of these deals, and with a view to providing solutions and expertise. We don't come to this transaction with a presupposed idea that you should sell. We don't come to this with a presupposed idea that you should sell to some kind of entity. Rather, we're here to collect the information and give you the best advice possible.
Oops, go ahead, Jean.
You okay? Do you have any personal or business related that might prohibit you from working with us?
No. I believe Obermeyer currently represents the borough.
Yes.
So there better not be.
Just double checking.
Yes, I'll get my coat fast.
In September, your company did a PSAT presentation that was related to selling why the borough would look at something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Is that available for us to take a look at?
Absolutely.
Or
Were you there?
No, but
Oh, okay.
I did some research,
Okay.
and it looked like it would be interesting. So that would be something that I would be interested in seeing if we could get a hold of that,
Absolutely.
even if it's a slide deck.
Absolutely.
And I just have one more last question. When you look at this process and you look at the allocation of individuals, whether it's partners, associates, or paralegals, what would you say the percentage of the time that those different groups of individuals would be part of a multi-year project?
So I'll be the principal face of the transaction. You saw Dave Nassiter in the package and Tassos, my partners, who are vital for so many reasons. But I would do the bulk of the drafting for the APA, the draft of the negotiating of the APA, and would represent you before the PUC if that's the route we ended up going. But we're blessed with some very talented associates who have been involved in a number of these transactions. So they not only help with drafting, They not only help with ancillary agreements, they dig into the due diligence on a much more cost-effective basis. And because I've worked side by side with both of the key associates that you may see on this transaction, although likely we'll be using Nicole Norcross, very skilled, very efficient. She's seen a lot of what we're going to come up against before, and she also knows when she's seeing something different where it's time to elevate it. So in terms of percentage, difficult to say, maybe 60-40, but I'm working to do better.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else have any questions? I just have one. How would your firm handle the billing for the borough for your services in that process?
Yes, so if we were fortunate enough to be selected, we would open a new matter, and we would bill on an hourly basis in accordance with the hourly rates that we have in the proposal. And you would receive a monthly bill, and so you would pay for the services you receive each month.
Okay.
It should be pretty straightforward.
Okay. Anyone else have any questions?
Oh, I'm sure you already know this, but we would also explain what all the time was committed to, so you could peruse the bills to make sure that it was,
Right.
good work.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure. I hope to get the chance to work with you.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is a hearing regarding a waiver of off-street parking for 117 Fayette Street, Style of Man. Ms. Stetler?
This is another waiver of off-street parking under Section 1307C of the zoning ordinance. Style of Man has been in the borough for about 10 years. Karen is here to answer any of your questions about the business or the move that they're planning. They have outgrown their space. They are functioning in 870 square feet. They were looking for something bigger. They wanted to stay within the borough, and 117 Fayette Street became available. That is approximately 1,500 square feet. They seem to be more looking towards expanding their space than adding additional people to work there. This is, Tradestone had a waiver of off-street parking for the cafe business, and Style of Man has had an waiver of off-street parking since they opened 10 years ago. So Karen, with that being said, Karen is here. She can explain to you the business and answer any of your questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
She's not here.
I stood all day, I'm sorry. Hi, good evening. My name is Karen Little, and I'm the owner of Style of Man down on 108 and a half Fayette Street. If anyone knows that spot, it's very tiny. It looks like a little bowling alley. It's been our home for 10 years. We love it. Very happy there. But unfortunately, we have outgrown the space. My girls sit at a counter about half this size for lunch. I do not have an office, and our waiting area is very small. So we would like to move across the street to 117, which is a beautiful space. My girls will have much more room for each individual station. We will have a bigger waiting room. We have storage in the basement, which we do not currently have at 108 and a half. We are very happy here. We love Conshohocken. February 1st will be our 10-year anniversary. We do have 3 other locations. We've been in business for 28 years. Most of our clients either walk to our shop because they live in the area. They are workers either at the pub, the Boathouse, Stone Rose. We have a lot of businessmen who work at either UBS or at Wells Fargo. A lot of our other clients live at the Grand. So it's not that we need extra parking. We just personally need more space.
How many chairs do you currently have?
We have 5.
And in the new space, you'll have 5 as well?
We'll probably have 6. Some of our gentlemen get color to color their gray, and we'd like to have extra space for them to sit to wait.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else have any questions?
No.
Okay. On that note, I would need a motion to approve a waiver of off-street parking for 117 Fayette Street, Style of Man.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Have
And
a-
congratulations for the 10 years.
Yes,
Thank you.
congratulations,
That's
that's
awesome.
wonderful. You have to table, Kristen.
So item C for conducting an interview for reappointment to the Marywood Park Commission is being tabled. Ms. Heel had an emergency, so we will move along to the consent agenda.
There are 3 items on the consent agenda. The first is to approve and adopt the November 6th and November 20th meeting minutes. Item B is to approve the November ending treasurer's report and accounts payable in the amount of $2,943,820.90. And item C is to adopt and approve the fiscal year 2020 budget and adopt and approve Ordinance 7 of 2019 to levy real estate tax for 2020 and fix the rate thereof. If inclined, there are 3 different motions.
Okay. So the first motion is to approve and adopt the November 6th and November 20th meeting minutes.
You do all 3 of them at the same time, or you?
No, we have to do them each individually.
So if some, go ahead, Ike.
Okay. I'll make the motion on number 1A.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. The next motion is to approve the November ending treasurer's report and accounts payable in the amount of $2,943,820.90.
Make that motion?
Second?
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. The third motion is to approve and adopt the fiscal year 2020 proposed budget and approve ordinance 07-2019 to level real estate tax for 2020 and fix the rate of 4.5 mils thereof.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is to consider adopting Ordinance 8 of 2019, which amends Chapter 11 of the Borough Ordinance to include the installation and maintenance of rear house numbers for residential rental properties. This item has been in front of you for discussion. It was also been in front of you to authorize advertisement, and tonight it is on the agenda to adopt the ordinance. If so inclined, I would need a motion to adopt Ordinance 8 of 2019.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
The next item is to consider authorizing advertisement of the 2020 meeting schedules for Borough Council and boards and commissions. If inclined, the motion would be to authorize advertisement of the meeting schedules.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
At your last meeting, you interviewed 2 entities for zoning services through an RFP process. This evening, administration is recommending that you award a bid for zoning services to Pannoni and Associates at the submitted rate. If you are inclined, that would be the first motion to make.
I'll make that motion.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
The next motion would be to appoint Pannoni and Associates as the zoning officer for the Borough of Conshohocken from January 1st, 2020 to December 31st, 2020.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Under new business.
Under new business, the first item is to consider approving an RFQ for the sewer system sale exploration.
So I need a motion to approve the RFQ for sewer system sale exploration.
Make that motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
The next item is to consider approving a confidentiality agreement with Washington Fire Company. President Leonard, this evening, that item is tabled. The reasoning for tabling that is that a memorandum of understanding with Washington Fire Company was signed in August that required Washington Fire Company to turn over their financials for a full audit by September 30th. Prior to September 30th, the borough received notification that Washington Fire Company would only turn over their financial data for the audit if the borough agreed to sign a confidentiality agreement. It's important to note that Conshohocken Fire Company number 2 did not request a confidentiality agreement and fully complied with the borough auditors. Their audit is complete. We are expecting receipt of the final report in the next few days. In other words, the borough requested the same exact information from both companies, one fire company was able to comply, and one has chosen not to. As presented, the borough and borough manager could not legally agree to sign the first version of the confidentiality agreement sent to the borough from Washington Fire Company. Borough Legal Counsel has gone back and forth with Washington Fire Company's legal counsel on numerous drafts of the confidentiality agreement. Unfortunately, the borough still does not have a version of an agreement in front of them that we can consider. So therefore, at this time, the agreement is tabled until further notice. Since the borough has not received any financial information to date from Washington Fire Company, the audit will not be completed prior to the end of fiscal year 2019. Since no audit has been completed, no appropriations of public funds will be distributed to Washington Fire Company until the fire company complies with a full audit as originally designated in the Memorandum of Understanding processed back in August of 2019. Today is the last business meeting for the borough in 2019. Since this matter is unresolved, we think it's important for the public to understand that this matter, as it relates to Washington Fire Company, will carry over into 2020. So for all of those reasons, again, the item is tabled and will be back in front of you at a later date.
Thank you, Steph.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
The next item is to consider approving 322 East 8th Avenue Financial Security Release Number 3 in the amount of $16,589.50. The engineer has been on site, has done a review, has provided a recommendation that was in your meeting materials. Administration is recommending the release of the amount.
Okay.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Do you need me to read that again?
No, we're good.
Okay. I'll do
Good.
it. Consider approving 701 Jones Street Financial Security Release Number 3 in the amount of $71,939.50.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Ms. Checo?
So the next item is a discussion item. We have a tax collector who we have a contract with, and specifically one of the items that they're responsible with is to collect delinquent taxes from any entity that has not paid their taxes. So we received notification from our tax collector that there is a specific company in the borough that has failed to pay their balances due in their business privilege and mercantile taxes from 2009 all the way to 2018. It equates to around $34,000 that they owe the borough in back taxes. However, I just wanted to make sure you were aware before we give the green light for them to go ahead and litigate, is that the contract, any costs and expenses from a legal perspective in terms to basically require legally this company to pay the taxes actually comes out of the money that you would collect in the taxes that are owed. So in essence, if they owe you $34,000 and the legal fees are, let's just say, $10,000, the borough is in essence getting $24,000. I think it's, in this particular case with this company, I think it is worth it. I think any company that decides they don't want to pay their taxes that are due from 2009 to 2018 at a sum of $34,000, it's time to push them.
Right.
So there's no vote that needs to happen. It's
And this is civil, correct?
It is.
It is.
It will be a civil complaint that's filed. And they may even, the collector may even be able to get some of the costs paid for by the taxpayer itself, although it's sometimes hard to collect fees from a taxpayer that's also delinquent in their taxes. But it is a civil action. It will be filed. Montgomery County Court of Common Pleas.
Okay.
Was there any communication from the company over the years why they were not?
No, in many of these cases, there's notification that there's a delinquency in owing money that goes out to them. There's only so many times you can send a notice that money is owed before you have to say, okay, a further step is you need to take an additional step to get what is owed to the borough. But no, there's no direct communication from this company in particular. Some do. So some companies receive their delinquent notice and they reach out immediately, and there's an effort on both sides to try to work through an arrangement. But in this particular case, it's been silent. So, any other questions on that? I just wanted to make sure before we move forward that you were fully aware of how the contract is written. Okay.
The next item on the agenda is consider approving an addendum for the employment agreement for the borough manager for years 20 and 21. I'll need a motion to approve an addendum to the employment agreement to the borough manager for 2 years, 2020 and 2021.
I'll make that motion.
Can
I'll second.
I ask a clarifying question? Is it 2 years or is it 2020 to 2021? Is
It
it
is-
1 year or 2 years?
So the way we've been doing Steph's contracts is they're actually they're ongoing. So there is no specific time period. There are provisions for notice that she has to give if she chooses to leave us, but that's it.
Okay.
The way that you have been handling it, though, to answer your question, you have been doing them every 2 years anyway.
I just wanted to make sure I understood it.
Yep, so practically speaking, 2 years is what you've been doing.
Okay.
Would anyone like to make that motion?
I did.
I did.
Oh, and a second?
Seconded.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. The last item on the agenda is consider approving the tuition reimbursement for Officers Hall and Ban and Detective Welter. So we need a motion to approve the tuition reimbursement for Officers Hall, Ban, and Detective Welter.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Public comment?
No public comment.
Mayor Aronson?
Okay. So we have another busy weekend in the borough.
It's an understatement.
That's all right. That's no big deal. So tomorrow, so Thursday, the 19th, the Conshohocken Running Club will have their annual caroling run. It's the 6th year of the event. The club meets at the Conshohocken Brewing Company and then runs around town to local businesses and the VFW. There we go. Singing Christmas carols, and it's usually super well attended. All proceeds from the night benefit the Colonial Neighborhood Council, and as you can see, it's quite a spectacle. So look out for them tomorrow. And then Saturday at Fiend, on the 21st, is volunteers are going to meet at 10 a.m. at Fiend to distribute Peyton Hearts to Conshohocken businesses and organizations. The Peyton Heart Project hopes to raise awareness of suicide and bullying by distributing hand-knitted hearts that contain a positive message and mental health resources. So we should see those pop up around the borough. We actually had an event a few weeks ago at the Methodist Church to actually sew the hearts together and put the messages on. So it's kind of unique that we were able to make them and distribute them in the community, which is really cool. And then Sunday, the 22nd at 3:30 is going to be our annual menorah lighting in front of Marywood Park House. Residents can see the lit menorah all 8 days at the park. So keep an eye out for that. And then since it's our last meeting of the year, Sarah and I want to wish our residents, council, administration, and emergency services a very happy and healthy holiday and a happy new year.
Thank you.
To add to Saturday, we have the, if I can get this correct, the La Prandera, which is a Mexican celebration of Christmas, and it starts at Tierra Caliente at 6 o'clock and marches up Fayette Street to the United Methodist Church at 6th, where there'll be more music and festivities. I'm looking forward to this. It's a first for our area. And from what I gather, we have quite a crowd coming out.
It's great.
Yeah.
Excellent. I just have an update from Friends of Marywood Park House, the fundraising arm of our group. We are looking to council to get approval to do our first activity, fundraising activity, that we're labeling Springfest. We're looking at Saturday, May 2nd as a proposed date. It'll be a family-friendly event. We're looking at food trucks, donation generating activities, which could include raffle baskets, staycation packages, those kinds of things. So that'll be our first fundraising event, and we're still working through the details of it. But the idea would be that around 5th,
all around the park. We could set up food trucks or food tents from local businesses, family-friendly, picnic in the park kind of deal, and then figure out some fundraising activities. So we're just looking for approval, as stated in our bylaws, from council to be able to host that activity on May 2nd.
Do we? I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Following up on what Yanni said, I'd like to thank everyone for a wonderful year. Our residents have been coming to more meetings, and your participation is really important to council, contacting us when you have issues, compliments, or complaints. We really do want to hear them. I'd rather have you tell us personally or on a phone call than read about it on some blog. So I want to offer a special thanks to our wonderful borough staff, everyone, our crew out in the parks. We have such a great team of people together, and especially thank our office personnel. I feel like you put your heart into everything you do, and it's really evident when you see the smiles on your faces. So I just want to thank you all, and especially my council members and our mayor and the staff. That thank you for a great year, and have a very Merry Christmas and a happy, prosperous, healthy New Year.
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody, borough staff, members, everybody in the borough for making this one of the best boroughs that I know of. It's the only one I know. But anyway, just thank you all. And I just want to wish you all a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year and many more. And I'll see you next year, and we're going to do a lot more. Thank you.
Karen?
I share the sentiments. So, happy holidays and happy New Year.
Chief Metz?
We're wrapping up our toy drive Saturday. We pretty much collected most of them, but the barrels are still out. And anybody who wants to donate some toys, get them in there before Saturday, and it'll be the last day. I recommend the Country Bakery because they'll give you a cannoli. If you come here, you just get a smiley
See your face.
Oh, yeah. The other trained observer in this room might have brought to my attention how 5 people looked at me when the lady from Style mentioned men coloring their hair. I did notice, and the other observer in this room has noticed it too.
But it looks nice. And one last thing for our informational purposes for our residents. January 6th will be our next meeting. It is our reorganization meeting. There will be no meeting on the first Wednesday of the month, since that, I believe, is New Year's Day. So January 6th will be our reorganization, and then and swearing in, yes. And then the 15th will be our voting meeting, just so everyone's aware of the different schedule for the coming of the new year. And on that note, I will say Merry Christmas. Thank you, everyone, for all your hard work. Everybody have a nice holiday and a Happy New Year.
Merry
Meeting
Christmas.
adjourned. Take care.